That week 3 game against Purdue and USC is going to be fireworks. We talk that one today.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We got a special crossover episode coming to here for you guys today with our guy Marc Kulkin of Locked On SC, of Talking Trojans every day for you guys over there. Check out his show. Marc, thank you for coming on the show. We're having someone for every game here on these last couple weeks of the off season. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your Trojans? Tell me a little bit about what that team's looking like leaving fall camp, how they're looking, and what you've seen being around that team.
Absolutely. So thanks for doing this, Nick. I think this will be a lot of fun. So yesterday, well, I shouldn't say yesterday. Recently, USC just held their second scrimmage. Fall camp is basically over. We're now going into mock game week, and then after that, game week preparing for Missouri State, which is the first game of the season. USC right now is just trying to kind of finalize everything. I think the staff understands who their starters are going to be, who their primary backups are going to be. The main focus right now is kind of going in on that offensive line, making sure they've got that left guard situation taken care of, as well as the starting center position. They've got the talent, they got the bodies they need. It's just a matter of finding the right fit. As I'm sure you know, USC used the transfer portal during the offseason. They brought in DJ Wingfield, who is anticipated to be the starter at left guard for USC this season. He's dealing with some eligibility issues right now. He has a court hearing that's coming up, looking to get that injunction. But this team in 2025, I have a feeling is going to open some eyes a little bit, wider than what people saw last year when USC made the transition to the big conference. It's going to be a defense first team, I think. And I'm hoping that Coach Riley used last year's close losses as a learning lesson and has figured out how to use his offense more effectively in the big conference, which tends to be more of a slow it down, let's run the ball, keep the clock moving, whereas Lincoln Riley comes from an offensive background. It's like, let's move the ball, let's put up points, and just let's keep going. And that might have caught up to him last year. So we'll see. 2025, this year, USC, I think, is going to be more of a defensive-oriented team. And once the quarterback, Jaden Mayaba, starts playing like the quarterback that everyone anticipates he can be, USC will be able to take off this year.
Absolutely. So you talk a little bit about that offensive line, some guys that USC has brought in through the portal. There are some similarities there with Purdue. Purdue's brought in over 50 transfers to completely rebuild this team with Barry Odom after kind of what Ryan Walters left that program in after leaving last year, being fired. So when we talk about Purdue, when we talk about Purdue's outlook for what they want to be this year, it's more of a heavy run offense behind senior running back Devin Mockobee. And Barry Odom wants to build up an offensive line to be able to be productive and have success running the football. So that's something that we've seen a lot of focus on throughout camp. Tonight is a Saturday scrimmage for Purdue. They're going to figure out some depth chart things after that game tonight, but very rep heavy. They haven't quite figured out who the starters are at O-line, but they've been really building it up, kind of preparing for that. So tell me a little bit about USC. We see that run-oriented offense at Purdue. You talk about Jaden Mayaba. He's definitely due for a big year. We've seen Lincoln Riley kind of churn out these Heisman winners throughout his tenure, both at Oklahoma and now at USC. Tell me, is he trying to run a heavy pass offense? Is he trying to run an explosive offense behind the arm of Jaden Mayaba? Just kind of give my fans a little bit of a look into that.
Sure. So the two names on offense, well, I'm going to give you three names that Purdue fans are going to want to remember. Let's start with the starting wide receivers. Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 1A. You've got Mekhi Lemon, you've got Jacoby Lane. Mekhi Lemon is in that mold of an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of receiver. He can run every single route on the tree. You can send him across the middle. He's just physically a tough guy. And you got Jacoby Lane, who is going to be that oh, wow type of playmaker. I mean, he just makes catches that physically you're not supposed to be able to do. 6'4", 200 pounds. He has arms that just extend like Groot, and he makes one-handed catches like he has Velcro, like he has a Velcro hand. USC brought in a running back out of the transfer portal. His name is Waymon Jordan. He was considered the #1 running back at the junior college level last year. Really exciting young player. He's got those type of feet that they're quick, choppity steps, but he makes people miss. And he has the ability to run between the tackles, but also get outside the tackle and use his elusiveness to make some big plays. So again, it starts with, on offense, Jacoby Lane, Makai Lemon, another name to remember, Waymon Jordan at running back. USC has, Lincoln Riley thinks this is his best running back room since he's taken over the program. They also brought in another running back. His name is Eli Sanders, who started his career at Iowa State and then transferred to New Mexico, where he was a 1,000-yard rusher. He's from Southern California. He's back home. He's going to be part of that backfield as well. And then again, if Jaden Mayava and the offensive line can work together, USC's offense should be able to look like USC's offense that you're accustomed to when Lincoln Riley's coaching. They took a step back last year on that side of the ball, whereas on the defensive side of the ball, they improved significantly, even though it didn't show up in the wins. USC led, I think, every game last year in the fourth quarter except for one, and they ended up losing in the fourth quarter, and it really came down to depth. So hopefully USC has addressed that situation. They're ready to play in the big conference year 2. And again, the names to remember: Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, the quarterback, running back Waymon Jordan. And we'll see if they get the tight ends involved as well.
Absolutely. So just about 2 weeks out from the start of week 1, from kickoff at week 1, these final few weeks of practice, you really want to start figuring out your guys who are going to be the ones at certain spots on the field. For Purdue, they haven't been able to do that at quarterback yet. They're still battling between two guys, between Orion Brown, who was at Purdue last year, showed some signs against an solid Illinois team at that. And then he transfers over to UNC, go play for Chapel Bill over there, and decides to come back to Purdue after the hiring of Barry Odom. And then you also have a guy in Malachi Singleton who comes in from Arkansas. He leads that last-minute drive against Tennessee, shows some signs against Ole Miss, even though that Arkansas team got killed in that game. But anyway, so these two guys are battling out. Barry Odom says we probably won't have a decision until the end of this next week. So we see that's a really key position with some uncertainty for Purdue. Are there any positions on the field? Obviously, you have your quarterback position kind of sorted out over there in Trojan land, but do you have any positions of note that don't have the ones sorted out, that we're still seeing a bit of a position battle going into these final weeks of camp?
Well, I mentioned the offensive line. Again, I believe that the staff knows who the starter is, who the backups are going to be. But if you want to start there, you would look at left guard and center. Your starting left guard could be either Micah Banuelos, Tobias Raymond. Your starting center could be Killian O'Connor, or the transfer they brought in from Syracuse, J.R. Reed. Again, all this could switch up if DJ Wingfield gets a positive response from the courts about getting that injunction and getting one more year of eligibility. At wide receiver, you're basically looking for the guys who can complement Jacoby and Makai. So it's again, USC has plenty of talent on the roster. That's never going to be an issue, especially at the skill positions. But if you can get Zacharias Williams, who was supposed to be wide receiver 1 for Utah this year, according to their head coach, Kyle Whittingham, he transferred after spring camp. He's one candidate. You also have Prince Strawn, who is a big wide receiver that came over from Boise State. So it's a matter of just kind of finding the guys who are going to complement at the wide receiver spot. We know that the lion's share of the work is going to go to Makai and Jacoby. Tight end, again, is another position, plenty of talent. It's how much do they get utilized? Are they going to be more of a blocking type of tight end, or are they going to be out there running routes? Hopefully it's a combination of both. And then on the other side of the ball, if we want to talk defense, defensive line is going to be, and I know you have your own hot take. I am saying it right now. This will be the best defensive line in the big conference in 2025. They literally have recruited, and they brought in 2 players out of the transfer portal to fortify what they need. It's young, it's big, it's strong, and they've been giving USC's offense all sorts of problems during spring, as well as in the fall camp now. So I think they're fine up front. That's not going to be the issue. They can absorb any type of attrition when it comes to injuries or anything like that. Linebacker, again, Eric Gentry is the name to remember. 6'6", 225 pounds. He literally, you can start him on 1 hash mark. He takes 2 steps. He's on the sideline. He covers that much space. And then you have Desmond Stevens, who is the other presumptive starter. Going to the secondary, you've got Kamari Ramsey at safety, Bishop Fitzgerald, the transfer from North Carolina State. And then at cornerback is really the position where they're just trying to find the guys who are going to be the starters. They lost 5 guys from the secondary last year. Jalen Smith is, he's getting ready to start for the Houston Texans. Is one guy at nickel. That's probably the biggest concern right now in the secondary. Who's going to play that nickel spot? You got a bunch of guys that they can slot in there, but until you actually see them do it with the lights on, that's the situation on the defensive side of the ball. Name your starting cornerbacks. Find the guy who's going to be your starter at nickelback, and let's roll. What's really good about what sets up well for USC, why they look for these little holes to kind of get filled, is yes, you still have 2 more weeks of fall camp, but I think the coaching staff is looking at their first 2 games of the year as kind of their preseason games, literally scrimmage games. They open up against Missouri State, and then they follow that up with Georgia Southern. So they got time to see these guys in real game action, see what they can do, and then kind of make adjustments from there before they travel out to West Lafayette to take on the Boilermakers.
Great. So we'll talk that game, week 3 against the Boilermakers, here next. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data, visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Do you have subscriptions that you forget you're paying for? Well, I did. And with Monarch Money, I was able to cut those out. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? OpenPhone solved that instantly. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnCollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. That's OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. Mark, in our last segment, we talked a little bit about how these teams are going to look this fall, going into the last couple weeks of fall camp, where these teams are at. But let's talk a little bit about that week 3 matchup against USC. That's one that's going to be very anticipated. Both teams should be 2-0 going into that game at Ross-Ade Stadium. I went on Spencer McLaughlin's show on college football the other day, and I said, Spencer, I know where USC was last year. I know that they're a good team. I know that they have more talent on the field than Purdue. I know that they have a better coaching position with Lincoln Riley being there for a few years. They're in a better spot than where Purdue's at right now. But let me tell you what, Barry Odom is trying to build up a heavy running attack behind senior running back Devin Mockobee, who is just 1,170 yards away from being Purdue's all-time leading rusher. We saw last year USC loses to Michigan when their feature back gets over 100 yards. We saw last year they lost to Washington when that feature back in Jonah Coleman got over 100 yards. And we saw they lose to Minnesota when Taylor gets over 100 yards. So that's something that plagued USC last year. The run stopping for USC wasn't there throughout the year. We did see some upsides towards the tail end of that year. It got a little bit better. But Marc, tell me, can USC stop that rushing attack from Devin Mockobee and Barry Odom in Ross-Ade in week 3 at 2:30 prime time?
Okay, so a couple of things that I think USC has going for them. Number one, I don't believe they're going to be ranked number 2 in the nation when they show up to West Lafayette. That's typically when Purdue jumps up and they beat a team that they're not supposed to beat. They're ranked number 2 in the country. It seems like that's just been their history. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic there. The losses that you brought up last year, go back to what I mentioned in the A block. USC held leads in every single one of those games. And the reason why they weren't able to make those stops against the run, those happened late in the game. They didn't have the depth. They lost their best players throughout the season due to injury, or their best defensive line player, at least on paper, who quit, Bear Alexander, who has now transferred off to Oregon. So just to kind of, put a little footnote into that, that's what USC addressed during the offseason, especially the interior of the defensive line. They brought in Keyshawn Silver from Kentucky. They brought in John Jarrett from Georgia. That should help alleviate the Michigan running back breaking a late run at the end of the game, setting up the late score. That should, same thing against Washington. We know what happened against Minnesota. The officiating also decided to forget the replay rules and say that, I don't want to go there anymore. Anyways, if USC can stop the run, is making Purdue a one-dimensional offense. I don't know if that's going to be good for you guys in year one. Look, Josh Henson, I'm familiar with him. He was USC's run coach last year / offensive coordinator. I'm sure he's bringing some ideas on how to stop USC, how to beat USC. Makai Lemon is a wide receiver transfer you guys brought in from Georgia, who started his career at USC. You have some pieces. But I think if we're being honest, Nick, when you bring in 50 plus new guys, new coaching staff, let's let everybody learn everybody's name first before we start jumping on we're going to beat that team. I understand because I've watched how this process plays out. When you bring in that many new guys, there's no familiarity. There's a chemistry problem. You're still learning the play calling language. There's just so much going on behind the scenes. So while I think Purdue will play tough, it's a home game. I don't know if they have the necessary pieces right now to compete with a program like USC, who, and if we're looking at it from their perspective, Lincoln Riley needs to show this year. He cannot have another year where you're going 8-5, 7-6. USC has to beat the teams they're supposed to beat. And again, not to sound disrespectful, they are supposed to beat Purdue in 2025. Bottom line.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. I see what you're saying with you bring all these transfers in. It takes a bit of an adjustment period when you add that many guys that have never played together before. Some of the UNLV guys that have followed Barry Odom have really plugged in, whether that's a Jalen St. John graduate transfer, a Hank Purvis, or a Mason Vicari. All those guys on the offensive line really just trying to plug in and be starters for that Purdue roster. So you talk about, hey, you've seen this before. You've seen that adjustment period. And you have whenever Lincoln Riley comes over to USC, a similar spot, maybe not having to bring in as many guys, left that program, but there was an adjustment period whenever Lincoln Riley comes up. Thankfully, you guys have Caleb Williams to kind of stop that. He really kind of jump-started that transition period. But tell me a little bit about what that period was like covering USC, kind of what you saw and what you expect Barry Odom to go through, whether it was at that level or not.
Yeah, so year one, Lincoln Riley shows up. He brings Caleb Williams with him. He was the Heisman, contender going into that season. Caleb Williams covered up a lot of zits that were on that team in 2022 for USC. I mean, there were a lot of blemishes. We can start with the defense and the defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch. USC, that season, they led the country in plus minus on turnover margin. They kept getting the ball back to the offense. They couldn't stop anybody unless they created a turnover. That stopped year 2. Again, you brought in all the transfers in year 1, but USC still had a bit of a nucleus at the offensive line. So it was an experienced offensive line that the former head coach and that staff had left behind. And again, you still had some really good skill players on the outside that Caleb Williams that he could work with. But it really reared its head in year 2. Again, if you don't have a defense and a philosophy that other teams fear, you end up going 8-5. So, yeah, you open up with Ball State, and I'm not sure who your other game is. It's another cupcake.
The Southern Illinois FCS opponent.
Exactly. There you go. So I say cupcake, because USC's playing 2 cupcakes this year. I understand. Yeah, maybe Purdue will win their first 2 games. How much does Barry Odom learn beating 2 teams you're supposed to beat, and then all of a sudden your first game is against, oh, that's USC. Oh, those guys have a much bigger defensive line. Oh, look at their offensive line. We didn't see those type of wide receivers at Ball State or at Southern Illinois. It's that type of stuff. So it's, again, depending on how good Barry Odom can get everybody, how quickly he can get everybody on the same page, get the team to be disciplined, which I think is probably one of the bigger issues. It'll be a challenge. Again, when you bring in 50-plus guys, it's a lot. And it's 50-plus guys. Sure, you brought in some guys from his former stop at UNLV, but you're just bringing a bunch of people from different areas. And a lot of times it's hard to coexist because everybody has their own individual goal. And unless you can make that same thing a team goal, people are trying to work on certain things that are going to advance their own career, not necessarily the team's career, because they weren't recruited by Purdue. Right now, you're coming in trying to maybe enhance your own play. Maybe your goal is to play in the NFL. So, like a Michael Jackson, great talent, wide receiver. He's now on his what? 3rd team?
Third, I believe.
So is he really looking to make Purdue the team, or is he looking to all right, what does Michael Jackson III have to do to open up the eyes of the NFL scouts? It's that type of stuff. It's little nuanced stuff that comes into play. And as the season progresses, you have to worry about attrition. Do you have enough talent to get you through this season?
Absolutely, Marc. So before we talk about some of the NCAA judgments that may be turning some heads, I want you to make a judgment for me, Marc. I've talked about on my show kind of the expectation for Purdue. I'm a little bit more optimistic than others about Purdue football. I do say that there is a path to beating USC, whether that happens, whether it doesn't. Obviously, the game's played on the field, but I saw Purdue in 2018 beat an Ohio State team that no one thought they could beat. Obviously, different circumstances, but my projection is for Purdue to win about 6 games this year, make a bowl. It's a lot. Definitely an optimistic take on the 3.5 that FanDuel and Vegas is throwing out. But that's my expectation. I see some winnable games, whether that's a Northwestern, whether that's a Rutgers, a Maryland, the 2 games at the start of the year, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my projections for what Purdue's going to do this year. Tell me what your projections are for where USC is going to go and what they're going to be this year.
So I've been very outspoken about this. The floor, the bottom line that USC can do in 2025, they have to win 9 games. Otherwise, the investment that USC has made into Lincoln Riley, infrastructure, everything that's been going on for the last 3 years, going into year 4, I don't want to say you're wasting time, but I with everything that you have at your disposal, whether it's NIL, the transfer portal, you have to be able to do better than 8 wins at USC. 8 wins is great for a lot of programs across the country. I'm sure you would be ecstatic if Purdue finished the year with 8 wins. At USC, that's a bad year, period. So 9 wins is the floor. Obviously, getting the playoffs is the goal. 10 wins is where you need to be. I think that, especially if your name is USC, you get 10 wins on the season, you're going to be in that playoff conversation. So that's where they need to go with it. As far as playing at Purdue this year, they need to win, and they don't need to win by 3 or 4 touchdowns, but they have to look good winning on the road. It would actually be technically, it would be Lincoln Riley's first win on the road in the big conference as USC's head coach. Last year they beat UCLA at the Rose Bowl. It's not really a road game when you're a USC fan. 25 Rose Bowl wins throughout your career, you kind of just make that your second home. And they did open up the season beating LSU in Las Vegas, and they beat Texas A&M in Las Vegas as well. Those are neutral site games. So Purdue is looked at as, all right, we should have won at Maryland. We should have won at Minnesota. We should have won at Michigan. We should have won at Washington. Those were losses that USC should have won. They cannot lose at Purdue, because if they do, I'm not trying to sound like Dr. Seuss here, Lincoln Riley, not only will he be on the hot seat, I'm wondering if he doesn't get the Lane Kiffin treatment where they leave him on the tarmac. This is one of those games where USC has to win, because it would set a really bad precedent if they don't.
So must-win game, week 3 for USC, in an opportunity to maybe turn some heads, surprise the people for Purdue. We'll talk a bit more about that throughout this offseason, going up into that week 3 matchup. But yesterday, the NCAA announced something that's turning me and Marc's head, frustrating us a little bit. We'll talk about that one here next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you got your name on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easier to get in the game. Maybe you have Joe Burrow winning the MVP this year. Got a Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Well, with PrizePicks, you can pick those guys daily, every Sunday, to go over or under their projected yards or touchdown numbers. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. That's PrizePicks. Run your game. August 26th is officially FanDuel's Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Do you think those Eagles are going to repeat as Super Bowl champions? Maybe Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, they bounce back this year. Well, with FanDuel, you can make your picks. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. Futures Day is one day and one day only. So FanDuel, play your game. The news of the nation yesterday was all surrounding our Big Ten counterpart, and that is the Michigan Wolverines. The announcement for the punishment was handed down yesterday upon the Wolverines. Marc, what do you think about that? What did you think about the judgment the NCAA came out with, and do you think it was fair?
So everybody's really lucky that this is a family show, because this is usually where I start using my adult language. Maybe the most egregious penalty that the NCAA has ever handed down. And let me say that why it's so egregious. Because of what they did to USC over 10 years ago. They literally just told Michigan, yeah, we know you cheated. Yeah, we know you had a lack of institutional control. However, just pay us $20 million and everything's okay. And they literally cheated on the field. The NCAA admitted it, and they gave them a slap on the wrist. Every year that goes by where USC got sanctioned, it just turns out it looks worse and worse and worse. Why are you giving Jim Harbaugh, a 9-10-year show cause? He's not coming back to college to coach. And the fact that people think that Michigan is getting penalized, I don't know what to tell you. I remember when I was a kid and my parents would, ground me, say, you did this wrong. You can't do this. This is like the NCAA telling one of their kids, you did all these things wrong. We're grounding you, but it's okay. Go outside and play with your friends. I mean, what's the penalty? Cheat, pay $20 million, and you can keep your national championship? Pretty livid right now. Like I said, I want to use more colorful language, but I know we can't do that around here. But I have one message for the NCAA. And usually when USC fans greet each other, they use the 2-finger salute called the victory sign. I got a 1-finger salute.
Okay. All right, Marc. And I'm glad that I have you on the show to ask you about this, because I'm of the opinion, I'm a very strong believer in Reggie Bush. They took his Heisman away from him, and now we got SEC schools that are paying players with Lamborghinis and Ferraris to go to their school, yet no recognition of Reggie Bush has been done. They slandered that man for years. With that judgment, tell me, we see Michigan, they kind of get a slap on the wrist. Reggie Bush, he's like, he's kind of out of it. Tell me how you feel about that. Tell me how you feel about Reggie Bush and compare that to where we are in college football now with the NCAA.
How ironic is it that, number one, I want to be very clear about this. USC did not give Reggie Bush a dime, a penny. What Reggie Bush and his parents did was start NIL before he was out of college. That's what USC got penalized for, because his parents were trying to make money off of his name, off of what he's done on the field. People were paying Reggie Bush money to leave USC, not to come to USC or to stay at USC. That's the big difference here. So, again, to see actual cheating going on where you have your coaching staff checking out other teams' practices, games, whatever, writing down what they're doing and using that and teaching your own players how to look, to read what's going on. I mean, I don't know. I was always taught that cheating was wrong. And here's the NCAA literally endorsing it. It's like, just write us a $20 million check and we'll look the other way. You can keep your national championship. Nothing really happened. If that's the case, if I'm the powers that be at USC right now, I'm going into the basement. I'm pulling out that national championship trophy. I'm putting it back inside Heritage Hall. I'm putting up all of those stats all over USC at the Coliseum again. I'm giving the NCAA the 1-finger salute. What are they going to do? Fine you? Write the check.
Marc, so final question for you today. So a big, when you think about cheating scandals in the NCAA, quote unquote, when you think about kind of the punishment given down, arguably the most severe is the death penalty, quote unquote, for the Pony Express for SMU. Back in the day, is that kind of what you expected from Michigan? What did you think would be a fair punishment for the Michigan Wolverines?
What I think would have been a fair punishment, because again, we're talking about cheating on the field, literally. I mean, it's like taking an ace out of your sleeve when you're playing poker. It's that type of cheating. It's at that level. So do I think they should have scholarships taken away? Absolutely not. That was something that even the NCAA said, well, we don't want to penalize kids who weren't there at the time. That's exactly what they did to USC. 30 scholarships over a 3-year period for telling you, you know what, you can't go to USC because of something that they did when you were in junior high school. So what I think would have been fair, definitely the monetized penalty of $20 million. In fact, let's double that. Let's really, if Michigan's a $2 billion a year brand or whatever that dollar amount is, $20 million is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. So you make the penalty, you make the financial penalty really worth something. And then you say, you know what? You don't get to play in the postseason for 1 year. You can keep your national championship, but we're gonna keep you from winning another one because we really want to make sure you understand what you did was wrong. You cannot do that. So anybody out there who's thinking that the NCAA came down really hard on Michigan, let's talk. Let's talk. I'll show you what hard penalties are. USC didn't get the death penalty. The NCAA did the next best thing. They put the players on USC's roster for 3 years at a disadvantage. They always talk about, we're looking out for the student athlete, for their health. Well, when you're traveling with less scholarship players than everybody else, If somebody gets hurt, now you're putting their health at a disadvantage. So again, I think the NCAA is a crooked organization. They needed to be disbanded. And if it was left up to me, yeah, Michigan, they're not going to the postseason for a year.
Great, Marc. I love to hear it. I love your thoughts on things. And that's all I got for you guys today. So thank you for making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you again for coming on the show, Marc. I'm sure we'll have plenty of conversations leading up to that Week 3 game. I appreciate you. And finally, you haven't been here for this, but as always, boiler up, hammer down.